On this week's edition of the NESN Patriots podcast, we break down the trade for J.C. Jackson, what the Patriots are losing in Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon, and we look back to the disastrous loss against the Dallas Cowboys. Dish out blame. Is it more on Bill Belichick? Is it more on Mac Jones? What is the current state of the Patriots? We also look ahead to what feels like a must-win game against the New Orleans Saints. Hello and welcome to another edition of the NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Dakota Randall alongside Zack Cox. Obviously, Zack, there is a ton to talk about, not just from what happened on Sunday, but what's happened here during the week, what will or will not happen this Sunday when the Patriots host the Saints. We'll get into what happened in Dallas with that awful 38-3 loss. Obviously, the Mac Jones conversation, the sort of state of the franchise talk that everybody's having this week. But I want to start with yesterday, with the Patriots trading for J.C. Jackson, a move that obviously was a direct response to losing Christian Gonzalez reportedly for the season due to a torn labrum. The Patriots also could be without Matthew Judon for the year after he suffered a torn biceps. So the Patriots trade for J.C. Jackson, obviously spent the first 4 years of his career here, went to the Chargers on a big contract, struggled, suffered a big injury. He's come back this year, not played well, healthy scratch 2 games in a row. Now he's traded back here for, I believe, a 2025 late round pick swap. The Chargers picking up most of that contract. The Patriots are on the hook for $1.5 million. And then Jackson isn't guaranteed any money the next 3 years. So kind of a low risk move for the Patriots. But my question to you, Zack, is, given the state at corner, with the loss of Christian Gonzalez and kind of everything else going on, is trading for J.C. Jackson enough after losing Gonzalez and everything else that's happening at that position?
TBD, I guess, just because we don't know what kind of J.C. Jackson the Patriots are going to be getting. Because as you mentioned, ever since he left New England, he has been one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL, especially if you go by some of the advanced Pro Football Focus type metrics. It was just a disaster of a signing for LA. As you mentioned, the fact that he was a healthy scratch the last 2 games as a guy making $80 million really said it all. And the Chargers essentially gave him away for free. I mean, the Patriots are paying next to nothing for J.C. Jackson. You mentioned the pick swap. That's, I think they sent a 6th rounder to the Chargers and they got a 7th rounder back. So it's basically just saying, here's J.C. Jackson if you would like to have him, and we'll also pay 90% of his salary or whatever that number actually works out to. So it's essentially a no risk move. I think it's a no brainer move given where the Patriots are at cornerback. If Jackson looks anything like he did in 2020, then I think it's going, or 2021, whatever his last season here, then it's a great move for the Patriots because he was a ball hawk. He was an interception magnet. He led the NFL in interceptions during his 4 years with the Patriots. And even if he's not quite back at that level, if he's anywhere close, then you're in half decent shape, especially if you get Jonathan Jones back either this week or next week, and then maybe Jack Jones a couple weeks after that. If you got a cornerback group of kind of vintage J.C. Jackson, Jonathan Jones, Jack Jones, Miles Bryant, plus the safeties, I think you're in pretty solid shape. The big question is you just don't know what J.C. Jackson is going to be. He's also said he isn't 100% healthy, even though he hasn't been on the injury report at all this year. So that's a little weird, but given where they are and the moves that were kind of available for them to make, I think this makes total sense.
Yeah, I think, the scary part, right, is that you're essentially back to the group that you had in 2021, which was not good enough at all. Yeah. But Jackson's worse. And you're adding Jack Jones, who we have no idea what we're going to get from him. And Jalen Mills seems to be kind of locked in at safety. So it feels like just sort of a reduced group of what you saw in 2021, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they had to do something. Like you look at basically they played the final, 3.5 quarters of this last game with Miles Bryant and Shaun Wade as their only 2 cornerbacks. I know we both like Miles Bryant a lot more than most Patriots fans do, but he's not a guy that you want to be playing as an outside cornerback, and Shaun Wade is basically always a healthy scratch when everybody's healthy. So it was basically their 5th and 6th string cornerbacks playing against a very talented Dallas Cowboys offense. I actually think they held up better than I was anticipating. I know Bryant let up that the touchdown right after Gonzalez's injury, but I mean, especially with the uncertainty surrounding all the other injured Joneses, like it was untenable to go forward with the group that they had.
Yeah, and I think, so my answer to the original question kind of is yes and no to do a cop out, just because, no, in the sense that, I think that there are risks with, JC Jackson himself said he's not 100%. And again, he has not played well at all since leaving the Patriots. And again, it's just kind of like the same group as a couple years ago. But, on the other hand, I'm ultimately a yes, because, for one, I think you needed to get someone who's a traditional boundary corner who has the size to replace Christian Gonzalez. I think the big problem for the Patriots, especially last season, is they were just too short. And especially without Christian Gonzalez, they're too short. I mean, I think Jack Jones can play on the outside, but he's undersized. Marcus Jones, obviously undersized. Miles Bryant, obviously undersized. Jonathan Jones isn't very big either. So they needed someone who, has the size and the ability to play boundary corner. Whether JC Jackson can go back to the way he used to play it, time will tell. But the other part of it too is, again, totally low risk move. They didn't have to give up much. And, I don't know if they're going to make any other big trades ahead of the October trade deadline. It probably depends entirely on what they do the next couple of weeks. But I would like them to save that trade capital. Let's say, for the sake of argument, they're willing to part with a second round pick or even a first round pick ahead of that deadline. That they're willing to make that kind of unprecedented move. I think and a lot of other, a lot of Patriots fans would agree, use that on offense, whether that be a real right tackle or, ideally a receiver. Because you're not going to go out of the deadline.
Sure. Yeah.
Huh?
I said it's one of those two. Those are still the two kind of headline needs on this team.
Because you're not going to go out of the deadline and make two separate moves, trade a second round pick for a top corner and a first round pick for a top receiver. You're probably only going to maybe do one of those kind of deals. And I think it'd be wise to save that for a receiver. Again, no idea if they're going to do that. But so a little bit of both, but I like the move. Low risk, high reward. On the other side of this is the loss of Matthew Judon, tore his biceps. Obviously, probably Patriots' best player. There is never a good time to lose your best player. The ceiling of the Patriots defense certainly takes a hit. But, I guess my question for you is, do you think they have enough to withstand the loss of Judon without actually going out and adding anybody of significance?
It depends on what you mean by withstand. That would be my answer. It's like, I think they can still be a solid defense without Matthew Judon and without Christian Gonzalez, assuming that JC Jackson is able to replicate some of that. But it's just so tough, because this is a team that we've talked about for weeks now. The offense isn't at a place where it can carry this team by any means. It's needed to win with defense and with special teams. And just even looking at that on its face, saying, all right, the defense that needs to win you games is now not going to have its unquestioned best player and potentially its second best player going forward. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to continue to be a defense that can just like single-handedly win the Patriots games. I am very interested to see how they replace Judon. It sounds like Keon White, the second round rookie, is going to have a starring role in whatever that looks like. You imagine it's probably going to be some sort of a joint effort between White and Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche. Maybe Trey Flowers gives them some of the pass rushing ability that they're losing without Judon. Jelani Tavai plays a lot on the edge as well. Maybe he'll do a little bit more of that. But it was interesting that Gerard Mayo basically came right out and said, yeah, Keon White is going to play more and we're going to need him to play well. I think he's played well in spurts so far this year. He's definitely showed a ton of potential. It hasn't really been at a Gonzalez level of consistency.
Well, the playing time just hasn't been there either.
The playing time hasn't been there. It's been kind of, he's run hot and cold a little bit. You've definitely seen some real splash plays from him. And it sounds like we're going to see a lot more of him. We talked to him in the locker room yesterday. He's an interesting cat. He was asked about kind of replacing the energy that Matthew Judon brings. Because obviously Judon is a big personality on and off the field. He's got the sack dances and all that stuff. And Keon White was just like, yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm not a big energy guy. So like, gonna have to look at somebody else to do that. And I was like, I can't tell if you're like joking right now or if you're like kind of this is like a self-referential, like, yeah, remember me at the draft. I'm like the serious guy, like, ha ha ha. Or if he was just like, yeah, no, that's not me. So
I think he's self-aware.
I
I don't
think
know.
he
He
is
is. He
too.
is.
I think he is too. But it was, yeah, it was funny. But I mean, you're going to be seeing a lot of Keon White, I think, moving forward. And they're going to need a lot out of him. I mean, they've gotten, I would say overall, he's been a very successful draft pick so far in terms of potential. But they're going to need him to be a kind of consistent, immediate contributor who's going to be on the field for them a lot. I think if he can do that, I think that helps the replacing Matthew Judon part. But if it's sort of a cluster where they're just pulling a bunch of different guys in, then they're going to have a hard time reaching that ceiling.
Yeah, I think I think the answer is a yes. I think they'll actually be okay. I think losing Gonzalez actually is a bigger blow. On Keon White, I mean, yeah, I think Patriots fans, I think they're aware. They've seen photos of him. They saw the draft video. They know like how intense he is. But I'm telling you, like that vibe extends into the locker room where I think I've only really seen like on 2 or 3 occasions a reporter has gone up and spoken to him one-on-one just because like he's got this intense look on his face at all times. One funny anecdote was we were all just kind of in the locker room and Pop Douglas was just sort of just walking through and he sort of crossed paths with Keon White and he did like, your classic joke, like juke one away, juke the other, like, hey man, how's it going? Messing around. And Keon White just expressionless, like looked at him or right past him and calmly walked around to the side, like didn't engage with any of that. It just, he's got an intensity to him it's pretty wild. But is on the field, I think, listen, I mean, yeah, he's more of a traditional defensive end right now, kind of in the Dietrich Wise mold, but Dietrich Wise was awesome in this game. And I just don't think he's going anywhere or he's not, that he's locked into that spot. I do think Keon White can play more of the Matthew Judon style. I think he can stand up. I think he can rush the passer that way. He did it more in the preseason. And I think he's got the athleticism to, make plays in coverage. I don't think he's not going to probably be as savvy as Matthew Judon was at times. We've seen Matthew Judon have good coverage moments, but again, he's more of a defensive lineman, Keon White. But I mean, there are those college highlights of him hanging with running backs on wheel routes. I mean, this is not you could not imagine Dietrich Wise doing that, for instance. Some of the things.
And he's stood up on the edge a fair amount this year. I agree that his primary role has kind of been the like versatile defensive lineman type, but there was the play, I believe it was against the Jets a couple weeks ago, excuse me, where he stood up on the edge in that Matthew Judon type role and basically just ran straight through 3 Jets blockers. It was like 2 offensive linemen and a running back. Almost got to Zach Wilson, forced a pass that was very nearly intercepted. So you see those kind of splash plays and you're like, wow, this guy, he's got something there. He's got some juice. He certainly has the athleticism. I mean, we saw it a couple times in the preseason too. Against the Texans, he was chasing down CJ Stroud from across the field. For a guy as large as he is, I think he's 6'5", about 290. You don't see too many people his size run as fast as he does. So again, he's got all the tools, he's got the potential, and it's going to be really interesting to see whether he can put it together consistently now.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I think Keon White, he's not going to be as good at that spot rushing the passer as Judon, but I think he'll do a good job. The question is he going to set the edge and hold up in the run? And so, that answer might be no, or it just might be inconsistent. And so I think the Patriots probably are going to piece it together with him and Anthony Jennings seeing an increased role. And I think that's fine. Like, I think if nothing else, Anthony Jennings, I think they can trust to set one of the better edges on the team and play well in the run game. And so, I think the Patriots are so good at scheming up pressure elsewhere. They have Josh Uche. They have these other guys that can do it, that as long as that other side, they have confidence that they can set that edge and hold up against the run. Yeah, you take a hit at pass rush, but I think they'll be okay, which is why I think it's tougher to replace Gonzalez.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jennings has actually been pretty good this year since he's come back. I know he was a healthy scratch in the first 2 games, but he had a really good game against the Jets. Jelani Tavai also had a really good game against the Cowboys the other day, and that's a guy that's probably going to work into that rotation as well. You worry if this kind of sends them back to where they were late in that 2021 season, where it was basically Matthew Judon was their only pass rusher, and when he kind of fell off, then they just couldn't get after the quarterback whatsoever. I think they're a little bit deeper there now, especially with the way Uche has been playing so far. I think you haven't seen a huge drop off from last season for him. So it gives you a little bit more hope there, but it's always going to be an issue when you lose your best player, even if you do think you have some of the pieces to adequately replicate him.
Yeah, I think they're certainly more equipped now to handle it than they were then. And then the one final point I'll make about this is, I think Matthew Judon's a fantastic player. And I think, just as a pass rusher, he has a lot of ability, no doubt about it. I do think that a lot of his numbers the last few years and a lot of his pressure has sort of been generated by scheme and these amoeba fronts and the Patriots running all these sort of different looks that free him up, which is why I think when they've gone up against, more savvy offensive coordinators that know how to sort of snuff that out or game plan against it later in the season, we've seen it fall off. I don't think it's partly Judon maybe run out of gas, but I think part of it is, the other teams figure out how to sort of handle all that stuff the Patriots are doing. And they're able to figure it out. So I think, maybe they can do the same thing and scheme up pressures for people like Jennings and Keon White. So we'll see. But yeah, definitely going to be two tough losses for the Patriots to overcome. But now I want to go back to the Cowboys game. This is a sky is falling week for the Patriots. It's so bad out there this week from a reaction standpoint that, like, I've heard multiple people say, things like, I'm so glad the Celtics and the Bruins are here, which two teams where the last time we saw them, one was losing to the Miami Heat in humiliating, spineless fashion, and the other was, having one of the more disappointing first round exits in like any sort of playoff history in Boston sports. But people are so down on the Patriots right now that a lot of people are checked out. And I don't blame them. 1-3 for the third straight year. It was that bad. 38-3, most lopsided loss in the Bill Belichick era or Bill Belichick's career. But I think the focus after that game is Mac Jones the guy? A lot of people have jumped ship. And what is the future of Bill Belichick and sort of just the general state of the franchise? So, this week, both of us sort of wrote longer form columns. You wrote something about why Bill Belichick deserves most of the blame for where they're at and that loss. I touched on that in mine, but I focused more on the Mac Jones side of things and sort of kind of defending him. So I just didn't know if you wanted to sort of dive into the analysis you gave and sort of the main points that you were trying to make in that story.
Sure. Yeah. On the question of, is Mac Jones the guy? I don't think anybody could say that at this point. I don't think there's anybody out there, even the most strident Mac Jones defender, that's saying, oh no, this is the franchise quarterback. This is the future here. He has not shown that, in my opinion. That doesn't mean he is definitively not the guy, that he should be benched, that he should not be playing football for the Patriots anymore, that they should go with Bailey Zappi. I don't think any of those are true. I think there is a middle ground that people for I don't know. I mean, it's the internet. It's always one side or the other. Most people are saying after a game like this, they're like, I never want to see Mac Jones on the field for this team again. And to an extent, I get that. This was a terrible game for Mac Jones. This was the worst game he's played in his career. He had 3 very bad turnovers. He almost had 2 more. He had one where he was rolling out and basically threw the ball right into the chest of a defender that was running in at him. And he had another kind of short arm throw to Devontae Parker that almost got picked off. So this game could have been even worse for Mac Jones. But the point of mine wasn't that Mac Jones doesn't deserve blame for this loss, because I think he does. Mine was the largest slice of blame pie, if we're going back to blame pie from a couple weeks ago. It has to go to Bill Belichick. You look at what's around Mac Jones in this offense and the type of player he is. He's not a superstar quarterback. He's not a physical specimen that can elevate all of the players around him. He doesn't either have that kind of freakish athletic ability or the Tom Brady ability to basically win with whoever's around him. You need to surround him with good pieces, and the Patriots just haven't. I mean, the right tackle situation is unfathomable that it's still this bad. This was the Patriots' clear and obvious number one need, in my opinion, coming out of last season. They went through 4 starting right tackles. None of them were especially good. Connor McDermott had a decent stretch at the end of the year, but came into the offseason saying, all right, they got to go out and get somebody there. And so far, they've had Calvin Anderson in the first 2 games. Some of his struggles were understandable because he missed all of training camp, but he got benched. Now it's been Vidarian Lowe in the last 2 games. And Lowe has allowed, I believe, 17 pressures over those 2 games. 9 of them came in this last game. Those 9
Well, that
pressures.
was maybe like that was among the worst off like tackle performances I've ever seen.
I looked it up, and yes, obviously he's going against Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is a great player. Still, Micah Parsons was hurt for a good stretch of this game. That was the most, according to PFF's charting, was the most pressures allowed by a Patriots offensive lineman in a game since Super Bowl 51, when Nate Solder allowed 13, apparently. So it's quite a while since a player has allowed 9 pressures in a single game. Lowe was also supposed to block a player that ended up strip sacking Mac Jones, led to the touchdown. Mac Jones should have had better awareness, but still, right tackle, still a major issue. Mac Jones was pressured on more than 50% of his snaps, and his receivers just can't get open. The Juju Smith-Schuster signing has been a massive problem for this Patriots team. The fact that you signed him to be an upgrade over Jacoby Myers, he has been about 20% of what Jacoby Myers was. He has 1 catch in his last 2 games. He can't get open. Nobody else on this team really has any juice in the passing game, other than Demario Douglas, who still isn't playing all that much. Hunter Henry's had a good season so far, but you need more from this receiving core. Again, Mac Jones did not have a good game in this game. Anybody saying that he did is just kind of being disingenuous. But the pieces around him, Bill Belichick was supposed to build a stronger supporting cast, and it isn't there. And especially if you look back, I think Mac Jones actually played pretty well for the first 3 games of the season. So I'm not going to take this one terrible performance and be like, this guy stinks, get him out of here, it's all his fault. It's Bill Belichick has really kind of done him and this team a disservice, I think.
Yeah, and I think, they have a traditional pocket passer. So you have to build the team a certain way. And for me, part of that is like good tackle play has to be non-negotiable. Like that has to be maybe more important than anything else. He needs to have both tackle spots locked down, just like it was with Brady. And they're not. I mean, yeah, Trent Brown's been fine, but I mean, they're lucky to an extent that he's been fine because he's historically unreliable. And then the right side, I mean, I guess this is a problem dating back to even Brady when
I was going to say, when's the last time they've had like a reliable right tackle? I think
like Marcus Cannon at his peak.
Yeah, like Trent Brown was good for like the second half when he came back from the injury. I think when was that, 2021?
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been, we had Marshall Newhouse there. You really have to go back to
Randall Luminor.
Yeah, like the Super Bowl, the most recent Super Bowl eras to find a year where you said, okay, there's the Patriots starting right tackle. You feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's been 5 years.
Yeah. And, you need good, like, so if you have a guy who can run around and make plays, one of these kind of quarterbacks, you can get by without, amazing tackle play. And you can kind of get by without weapons that are like incredibly singularly talented, because at the end of the day, if you're able to like run around and make plays, almost nobody's going to hold coverage for that long. That's why so many of those broken plays end up being completed, because eventually the coverage falls apart and then anybody can kind of get open. I know that's a oversimplification, but if you're someone like Mac Jones, you need guys, you need protection, and you need guys who can get open in a hurry so you can execute this quick passing attack that the Patriots are known for. Kind of like what Tua's getting right now, that he's getting the ball out incredibly fast because his guys win right away. I'd have to look closer to see how his tackle play has been this year. It feels like it's been better. But I agree. I just think they haven't built the team in a way that one suits Mac Jones' strengths. And then, again, they've sort of doubled down on spending all this money on special teams and defense, using the first 3 draft picks on defense, which again, those guys look good, but it didn't address what I think we both agree are the bigger needs on offense.
Yeah, I agreed on all points there. It's just, he has not stocked the offensive cupboard, so to speak, nearly as well as this team needs. And I still think you've seen improvement from the offense overall this season. Obviously not in this game, but through the first 3 weeks, the points weren't really there, but you could see progress and you can see things moving in the right direction. And maybe this was just kind of a very unfortunate 1 week blip, and Mac Jones kind of gets his mind right and they end up actually improving in the weeks to come. But yeah, the talent issue has been problematic so far, to say the least.
Yeah, and as I think this game notwithstanding, I do think the offense has glimpses of being better or more coherent than it was last year, but at the same time, they've gone down in points every single week from 20 to 17 to 15 to 3. So they are going in the other direction. And I think maybe you could say the same thing for the defense as well. Maybe it's just kind of been the same. It's all around been disappointing. But for my thing, why I kind of wanted to focus on Mac Jones, we just touched on a lot of it. The putting the blame on Bill Belichick is a big part of that. And I also think just the way the game was, going up against the Cowboys, who, if nothing else, they're very talented and they're very fast. And they just were able to expose the Patriots, like Hunter Henry said. And I mean, I think Next Gen Stats had a pressure rate of over 52%, which is an outrageous number. And the Patriots, in terms of their average yards of separation, were well below league average, kind of across the board, whether you're looking at Next Gen or PFF. And so the Cowboys it feels like they went into that game and said, we're just going to play up on the receivers because we know you can't get open. We're not worried about you completing anything down the field because we know you don't have enough time. You're not going to be able to protect it. And they were right. And I think the game, it was kind of a house of cards that was staying up before that strip sack. And then that one happened and it all unraveled. And, to be fair, Mac Jones unraveled with it, which was the most concerning part, that he just kind of played out of control. Because even in some of his his other poor performances, like as an example, rookie year, the first half against the Colts on the road, when he played poorly, the second half he rebounded and played great.
Even week 1 this year, he had the pick 6 right at the beginning of the game, and then everything was significantly better after that.
Yeah, this one, it just spiraled, and it just seemed, I've seen some people suggest that he quit. I don't think it was that. I think he just was like as frustrated as he's ever been. It was just like it all sort of, I think he strikes me as someone that puts like an unhealthy amount of pressure on himself. And maybe a lot of that is the external noise. And it felt to me watching it like it all just came out in that game. But the other main point I wanted to make is just that, like, the question on Mac Jones, remains, is he good enough to be a franchise quarterback? And I just don't think this game and in a vacuum answers that question one way or the other. You're never as bad as your worst game. You're never as good as your best game. And to me, like, if you just look at his career, this game is a total outlier. It's by far the worst he's ever really played. I think there's one game with a lower passer rating. I think it was against the Bills his rookie year, a loss. But other than that, I mean, just eye test alone, this obviously is the worst game he had. And it just felt to me like some of the reaction to it this week was a lot of just confirmation bias. It's a lot of people who really, really don't like Mac Jones for a variety of reasons. Some of that related to his play, some of that sort of the other stuff, whether it be the cheap shots, the Alabama background. And I think a lot of people, including Patriots fans, wanted to see this game happen. I think maybe they were a little frustrated that the first 3 weeks he played well and that you couldn't blame Mac Jones. But I think a lot of people, there's been blood in the water and they've been waiting for a reason to create a frenzy, so to speak. And this game offered that to them. But I think, and so I get it, I understand that, but I just think, it happens. It just does. It happens to the best. It happens to the worst. It happens to the guys in the middle that are, where Mac Jones probably is. I kind of looked at just in terms of his interceptions and his passer rating. This game he had obviously the 2 interceptions and a passer rating of 39.9. I mean, if you just look at Tom Brady, and not to compare Mac Jones to Tom Brady, but for the sake of conversation, Tom Brady
just threw their phones out the window.
Right. Well, right. So he had a pass rating Mac Jones had a pass rating of 39.9 this game. That was the third lowest of his career. And this was his sixth with multiple interceptions. His career high is 3. Brady had 49 games with at least 2 picks, and 11 of those occurred in his first 3 seasons as a starter, which is the range Mac Jones is in right now. Brady also had 6 games with at least 4 picks. And if you want to talk about, the margin of loss in this game, 35 points. I mean, Brady was on the field for losses of 31, 27, 25, 24, 20, 19, and 16. He had 2 games with a worse passer rating than Mac Jones had in this game. And obviously he turned out fine. And then obviously that's not to say that Mac Jones is going to turn out to be just fine, but it's just that this game happens even to the best, especially earlier in their career. And if you want to leave Brady out of it, you look at someone like Trevor Lawrence. He has 2 games with a worse passer rating, 7 with multiple interceptions. Tua, who I think is someone who on the other side of this, fans really want to convince themselves is really great, even though I think he's at the end of the day in the same bucket as Mac Jones. He needs to be propped up with weapons and scheme. And right now he is being propped up by those things, and Mac Jones is not. He has one game with a passer rating essentially the same that Jones had in this, and 6 games with at least 2 picks. Josh Allen, if you watch him earlier in his career, he's got a lot of games with a worse passer rating than Jones, and a lot of games with multiple interceptions. You could play this game on and on. And so I just think, yeah. Sorry.
I think the issue with that, and I know you touched on it in your piece, all of the players that you mentioned have either had obviously kind of like big time playoff level success in the terms of, or when you're talking about a player like Brady or Rodgers or those great ones, or at the very least, even with someone like Tua, he's had a 5 touchdown, 450-yard game that you say, oh, wow, look at Tua in this offense. Mac Jones has never really had that, right, which I think is the big issue and why fans are so quick to kind of jump ship after a performance like this. Because if the baseline for those players is significantly higher than it is for Mac Jones, when they dip down, then they kind of come back up to that same level. With Mac Jones, it's just sort of been, I don't know, 60% the entire time. With a game like this, it dips down to 15%. You haven't seen him really escalate. I mean, we've talked about it. It seems like a million times. It feels like we talk about it every week. He hasn't had that signature type victory
right
in his career. We tried to pinpoint one a couple of weeks ago, and we really couldn't. Obviously, that's not all on him. Some of that is kind of team based as well. But until he does that, I think it's going to be so easy for people to pick out a performance like this and say, look, this guy hasn't won the Patriots any real games that they shouldn't have won anyway. And now he's playing terribly like this, like, get him out of here. So this is why in my opinion, the response from Mac Jones is going to be really, really, really important this week. If he comes out and plays well, plays a clean game, he doesn't have to light it up, but if he comes out, plays relatively mistake-free football this week, then I think you can gain some confidence in him moving forward. If he comes out and is a disaster again, then I think the leash with him has to be pretty short. I don't think it would have made sense to start Bailey Zappi this week and bench Jones. But if he throws 2 interceptions this week and then throws an interception and loses a fumble next week, if kind of errors like this persist, then I think the Patriots have to consider making a move, even though I don't think, based on what we saw from Bailey Zappi in the preseason and Bill O'Brien's offense, I don't think he would be an upgrade. But with Mac Jones, the strength of his game is supposed to be, all right, this guy's not the most physically talented guy, but he's super smart. He takes care of the ball. He makes good decisions. He puts it where it needs to be. And that obviously was not the case last week. So if you're lacking physical talent and you're making dumb turnovers, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So it's really important for Mac Jones' sake that he bounces back and has a much more respectable performance this week.
Yeah, I agree. And you touched on it. Like, at the end of the day, the problem is that he just hasn't had any other games on the other end of the spectrum to balance it out. Yep. But I would say, if you even go back to Tua, who does not have a playoff victory either. Not really his fault. He was hurt last year. I still think that he's kind of the same. He's in the same place where he's kind of always been for me, in that I think he's pretty good. He's not great. He's in a good system right now. And I don't think he's as good as a game where he went out and scored 70 points. Like, I just think that's an outlier. I think the larger body of work suggests that he is slightly above average. It kind of is similar to Mac in a lot of ways. The biggest game he won was at Alabama, a national championship. He's had a lot of close but not cigar performances in big games last year. They had that shootout with the Bills in Buffalo, and they came up just short. But I think it kind of goes back to the eye test, where you just watch them and it's not as pretty or as electrifying at times with Mac Jones. I mean, I looked at it with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you want to talk about a good comp, like across the board, Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence have like near identical stats. Jones bested him in a lot of areas.
Yeah, it's eerily similar.
Yeah, they both had a season torpedoed by coaching incompetence. A lot of similarities, but if you watch those two side by side, you would never suggest that Mac Jones is as good as Trevor Lawrence. So, talent obviously matters for something, but at the end of the day, I just think that for me, I'm in the same place that I was on Mac Jones as I was, a few weeks prior, where I think he has the intangibles and the ability to be a franchise quarterback, but he hasn't proven it. He has to prove it this year. And the fact that he had one outlier stinker in week 4, I don't think changes the calculus for me, even though I think it does have to move the Patriots slightly closer to a post Mac Jones world because he played so out of control. All right. Wrapping up though, let's quickly touch on the game coming up. Sunday's game, home game against the New Orleans Saints. Boy, this one isn't going to be
barn burner.
This one, yeah, this one's not going to be a barn burner too much. If you think the Patriots offense is boring, I mean, the Saints might be even worse. Even though they have someone like Chris Olave, who is a good receiver. Derek Carr, I mean, I think Derek Carr is the classic kind of quarterback where Bill Belichick has zero respect for him, and they'll have a plan for him, even though Carr had that sort of comeback win with the Raiders last year, which was a little fraudulent. It was more defensive failure by the Patriots. But I just think generally, this game is probably going to be low scoring. New Orleans' defense, I think, is better than a lot of people realize. Their offense is really, really bad. I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think the Patriots win. However, I have picked the Patriots every week this season. So I have to at some point acknowledge that I'm an idiot, and I have to allow for the possibility that they lose this game too. What do you think happens, Zach? Do you think that they get the job done in this game and get back on track? Or do they have what would be truly a franchise altering loss, I think?
Yeah, this is going to be such an ugly game. I mean, usually when you say that, it ends up being surprisingly appealing to watch. So hopefully it goes in that direction. But yeah, Patriots third to last in the NFL in scoring this year. New Orleans is tied for fourth to last. So 15.5 points per game compared to 13.8 for the Patriots. Mac Jones and Derek Carr, excuse me. I saw Brian Barrett, who does great work over at The Ringer, sent out or tweeted a stat comparison. They basically have the exact same stats this season. They're essentially the same player. These are essentially the same team. I think the Patriots win. Again, I think a lot of it is going to depend on whether JC Jackson is able to, one, show up and play immediately, and play somewhat reasonably well. One path you can see to the Patriots kind of blowing this game is a coverage bust for a 60-yard touchdown to Chris Olave. But I like the Patriots in, again, an ugly, low-scoring game. I said 11-10 to somebody yesterday. That was kind of a joke. I think it's going to be, I'm going to say 17-10 Patriots, with one of the touchdowns being a Kyle Duggar scoop and score. So one offensive touchdown. You're still going to get a lot of questions about is this Patriots offense completely broken? But I think that they do enough to win a very ugly game this weekend. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think they win too. It's not going to be pretty. However, I will allow for the possibility that it is pretty and that Mac Jones goes out and has his best game of the season, even though it's against good defense, just because, I know he didn't show a lot of resilience in that game the other night, but I do think over the balance of his career, he has shown that sort of quotient that you're looking for. I mean, rookie season, you go back to where he had that bad first half against the Colts, rebounded in the second half, but nevertheless, they lost that game to snap that winning streak. The next week against the Bills, at least in terms of passer rating, he had his worst passer rating of his career, one of the lowest PFF grades of his career. So he was on a bit of a slump there, and then he came back with a 50-10 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars the following week. And then last year, I believe he responded to that awful night against the Chicago Bears, where, we all know what happened. He went out and played a great game against the New York Jets. No, that game wasn't high scoring. It was 22-17. Yeah. But I think Mac Jones played really, really well in that game. So I do think when his back against the wall, he has shown an ability to bounce back. And I don't know about you, but I think he does do that in this game.
He did almost throw a pick six in that game that would have completely spiraled the entire season. You remember that one? The one that was right in the guys. I can't remember if it was CJ Mosley or who it was. It was right in his hands. Yeah, and then the Patriots end up winning. I think that whole season could have been very, very different if that happened. But I agree. He did play a significantly better game than he had against Chicago. And overall, on the whole, he has shown that kind of resilience that you want to see from a quarterback in his career. Talking to the players this week, at least publicly, they all say that they're still very much in support of Mac Jones. They seem to have confidence that he's going to bounce back and not have a repeat performance of what he did last week. Mac himself even said that he has to kind of re-earn that or prove that he deserves that confidence after such an ugly game. But yeah, based on what he has shown in his career, I think he in the past has been someone who's been able to overcome that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I believe he can bounce back from that. Can he be great? That the jury still is out on that. We're still waiting to see. But that'll do it for us. You can follow me on X now with no article cards, at Dak Randall. And you can follow Zack at Zack Cox. I feel like before we got to
Zack Cox NESN.
Zack Cox NESN, right? I feel like
I've been trying to get at Zack Cox for years and years. The guy won't give it to me.
Oh, it's taken.
It's taken. There's one guy has at Zack Cox. He has tweeted once in 2011, and his one tweet is, "How does a duck know how to tell his wife apart from other ducks?"
Does he offer the answer?
No, he went dark after that. So that's at Zack Cox. If you're listening to this, I would very much like that Twitter handle. But
well,
great tweet.
Giving it to you is the least he could do after what happened to you in Dallas this week, getting stranded in Dallas.
It's a week 4 curse, I think. And look, I'm never going to complain about traveling for work because we get to travel and watch football. But last year we had a whirlwind ordeal getting back from Green Bay. We ended up getting stranded a night in Chicago.
That's right. I didn't realize it was the same.
That was week 4. This year, week 4. Yeah, my flight gets overbooked. I end up spending an extra night in beautiful Dallas, getting back to Massachusetts about 24 hours later than I was expecting to. It's been a rough couple of days.
No, it's the Zappy curse. When Zappy plays, we get stranded.
Zappy season debuts are ruthless for my travel schedule.
Yeah. When Mac Jones gets left for dead, we get left for dead. All right. Anyway, Patriots take on the Saints this weekend. Again, you can follow me at Dak Randall, follow Zack at Zack Cox NESN, and you can follow all of our Patriots coverage on NESN.com.